Okay, hey, let's start this episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. When most people think about the ninja, right, other than black outfits and creeping around at night and doing tricky stuff, what do they think about, right? Nothing sparks the imagination about ninja like these specialty weapons, right? From shuriken to these hand claws to blowguns. Let's not forget those little like impact smoke grenades and stuff that cause them to like vanish in an instant, right? Anywai, hey, Daishihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts with this week's Whiteboard Wednesday. And what we're going to be focusing on today, we're going to take a look at is combination weapons, okay? So to do that, we really need to jump into the way the ninja think about weapons just in general, okay? Because we need to understand that ninja tend to think of things in the context of principles and concepts more than like concrete fixed things, right? It allows them to be more adaptable, right? Be able to come up with plans and solutions on the fly, which is really what we're looking at. Okay, so we'll talk about that as we move down through that. But let's start this way. Let's take a look at the 5 weapon categories, right, within the ninja's arsenal. Okay, so 5 weapon categories. Okay, so first, right, we've got bladed, or what I would normally call edged. Okay, so it doesn't matter if we're talking about a sword, knife, broken piece of glass, whatever, right? Okay, 2. Okay, again, we'll keep it simple on one side, but extend it out more, right? So stick, but impact weapons. Okay, impact weapons. So blunt force, that kind of thing. Okay, and then we'll go to flexible. Okay. I just did that backwards, didn't I? Right. So this would be like chains, cords, right? That kind of stuff, right? Okay. 4, projectile. Just did the same thing again, right? So anything that we could throw or cause to flip, fly, whatever, right? So this could be firearms. This could be thrown weapons. Whatever. Okay, this is where shuriken, everything from shuriken to arrows to bullets, whatever go. Okay, and then down here we've got combination. Okay, so the reason I put this down here is because to have combination weapons, right, we'd have to look at these other things because this category combines 2 or more from the rest of the list. Okay, and like weapons are just the things that make most people feel all warm and fuzzy. Okay, but let's back up a little bit because the ninja weren't the only ones who used combination weapons. And if we're not careful, we can overlook things, okay? In the general martial arts world, right? Nunchaku, right? Not nunchucks. Nunchaku, right, is a combination weapon, right? It's 2 sticks attached by a cord or a chain. So it's a flexible / impact weapon, okay? It doesn't matter how somebody thinks about, well, it does matter how somebody thinks about it because the way you define something, and I just covered that during this week's Kuden, right? That the way we define anything creates the limitation, okay? So it's not that we shouldn't be defining our goals or whatever it is that we're looking at, but we have to understand that that definition creates a ceiling. It creates a stopgap or a bottleneck, right? That's the point in which we'll stop learning, okay? So got a couple of weapons here, right? So if we understand, right, the naginata or the nagamaki, right, as a combination weapon, right, very common in the samurai arts, okay? So what we're really looking at, right, is a staff or impact weapon because on one end, there's no blade, right? We can strike with this. We can use the shank, the staff part, that kind of thing. And then we've got this short sword, right, or this blade attached to the other end, okay? So while lots of people learn to use a naginata for the purpose of having a naginata, right? When they do that, they're kind of condensing a bunch of training, right? In our curriculum, this is actually placed farther down the line, not just because it's a historical weapon and why would anybody use this or whatever, but okay, we'll talk about this as we go along, okay? But to really get the most out of this weapon, I really need to be good at long, or in this case, 3/4 staff, right? Jo or a rokushakubo, right? And edged weapons, okay? Because what I'm doing is not just reaching out to cut somebody, right? Or to stab somebody, but I have the ability to use this as a staff half the time, right? Okay. So again, spear the same way, right? So again, you have the same idea, right? You've got this 7 to 9 foot, staff with some kind of a blade on the end of it, depending on what it is that you're looking at. Okay. So again, the ninja weren't the only ones that were creating combination weapons. Okay. So, but to have them, we're bringing other things together. What I do want to do during this session, and again, I don't know how long or short this is going to be, but I want to take a look at 3 ninja specific weapons, take a look at the combination that's going on, but I want to go beyond this idea of the weapon. Okay. We're actually going to take a look at the concept of the weapon as a non-weapon. Okay. So let's take a look at this ninja-to. This is the most common version that people think of, because ninja swords were straight and samurai swords were curved, right? No. Okay. This is a Chokto style blade. Okay. Chokto, Chinese style, right, is the straight blade that most people are thinking of. Came from a certain period in time before they had developed the curvature for certain things, right? So there's the ninja to, and then there's this idea of a shinobi katana, right? Shinobi as in referencing ninja, right? Stealth, that kind of thing, right? And katana is just another way to say katana, right? So that curved blade, whatever, but things are a little bit different, right? We're going to expand on this in a little bit, but very often what you had was a more rustic tsuba handguard, right? Often even broader than this, bigger and fatter than this, right? Because the ninja tend to see their weapons as tools, right? Instead of seeing it as a weapon as such, okay? Again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but all ninja weapons, regardless of whether it's a fist or an actual physical weapon, have dual or more than one purpose, okay? It could have more than 2 purposes, okay? Like the knife hand, right? Everybody gets this thing for chopping and whatnot, right? But it's also a percussive striking kind of thing, but it's also our primary climbing fist or climbing hand because this shape is stronger and uses muscles in a much different way than just clinging on with the fingertips. Now, if all you have is a handhold for fingertips, that's what you have, but the preference is in using things this way because it's stronger, right? Anyway, so, but ninja-to, so you have this broader tsuba, right? Because it could be used, it could be tossed against a wall very, very quickly. The sageo, the longer cord, right? Way longer than what would be on a samurai sword, could be thrown up and over a wall, and then the tsuba can be used as a step to help launch the person up and over. Well, what's the sageo used for? To pull your sword back up, right? So you have it as you continue on, okay? Sometimes now this one's not fashioned this way, but sometimes there's a hole in the end of the saya, right? This version, right? It's a spear end, okay? But in some versions, there's a hole here, or in some position, if the saya is flat at the end, like you're normally used to seeing, there would be a hole, right? And then this would be used as a mouthpiece or a snorkel for hiding underwater or for traversing bodies of water so that you could breathe, right? All kinds of things, right? So, and you can buy the tricky versions these days that have shit sticking off of them and all that kind of stuff. But right, again, keeping things fairly basic, right? But again, by changing the tsuba, right, you have something that's very different. It's not ornate, right? Typical samurai tsuba, thinner, the katana, right? Another katana would go right through that, okay? So it's not that this provides much more in the way of protection, but it's now stepping outside of the realm of the weapon itself, or providing pieces, right, that cause more damage when I scrape or slam into the person or whatever. And then the saya, again, we'll come back and talk about that in a bit, right? And then we've got this is an older weapon called a kyoketsu shoge, okay? Kyoketsu shoge. So what we're looking at, literally, right, is a broken kamayari, a broken spear, okay? that you have anywhere between 12 and 18 feet of rope attached to it, right? With some kind of weight at the end, right? Very often it was a ring because you could pass things through and then create, nooses and ways to tie things up and whatnot, right? But what do we have, right? We have an edged weapon, right? Attached to a flexible piece, right? And then we've got an impact piece at the end, which would be that weight, okay? It's like modifying even a Kusari Fundo, right? The weighted chain of the Manriki Kusari. These blunt bars or knobs at the end of this flexible cord, okay? And while a lot of people will put a weapon like that into a given category, right, our ability to see that we're actually combining more than one thing is really, really important, okay? And this is what points to something beyond, right, this idea of just ninja weapons, right, or this one limited way of seeing these things, okay? Because in all honesty, I find it very difficult to believe, and this is after 40 plus years of training in this art and in other martial arts. I find it very, very difficult to believe that people would just sit around. Now, I believe that people today do it, right? But people just sit around going, if we tied that to that and put this on the end of it, man, we could do some serious kick at. Yeah, but see, now we have to, that begs the question, how are we going to figure out how to train with this thing so that we could use it effectively, right? What I believe is much more plausible is that because warriors in general, right, would very often carry a length of rope with some kind of a weight, or sometimes they even look like a little grappling hook kind of thing. They were just these little things. They were called naganawas, okay? It was just just a rope, right, or a binder. And so they would carry these things because they may, in their trek of walking from place to place, right, have to set up encampment overnight. They might have food or stores or whatever, and you put it in a sack, and you need to keep it away from animals, right? So you bind this thing up, hoist it up in a tree, or, suspend it down from a branch or whatever, keep it safe. Okay, you could use it for other purposes, right? There's this art of hojujutsu, right? That tying somebody up, right? That kind of thing. So if I already have that, then I probably, if I'm carrying that, I already have that skill, right? I already know how to use this pretty well, okay? And then, right, probably, used to using short swords, small weapons, that kind of thing. But since this is a broken piece of spear, right? So now I've got that kind of thing. And so I would understand the spear use of being able to hook somebody or snag them or cut them from behind or whatever. And then the short sword application. Tanto, I know people tend to think of knives, but that was a later development, right? Tanto were normally thought of as short swords, okay? So again, we have to think about how they thought about it, not the way we assume things were happening, right? So anyway, right? So again, we have skill with. We have skill with. Now we've got a problem, right? I got this, and I've got this extra thing, right? So what's happened? If I'm on a battlefield and my spear got broken, and this is what I have, right? I have a choice, right? I have a choice of a 3/4 or 6 foot blunt staff against murderous guys with murderous intention coming at me with 36-inch razor blades, right? So I have a choice. Use a stick. If it's what I have, it's what I have, right? Or I've got this thing, right? So maybe this is what ended up in my hand because of where it broke. And so I do something, but now how do I regain the advantage of distance that I had with the spear? Because remember, with a spear and naginata, I can kill him from 6, 8, 10 feet away, right? With this, things are going to get up close and personal. And if he has a 36-inch razor blade, okay, kind of like bringing a knife to a gunfight, okay? So how do I regain that, right? So again, in the stories of the Gyokoryu, where this was a secret weapon, that kind of thing, right? It's been a matter of somebody very, very quickly thinking, grab this thing, right? Tie this into it, if that's what I have, right? And then over time, because, people are going to come back from battle, right? And they're going to talk about how they use this thing, whatever, right? Start combining weapon skills and whatnot. But here's another thing from the ninja side, right? I have to go out on this mission, right? We're not packing up the Jeep Cherokee, right? We're not packing up the Humvee, right? What are we doing? Well, if we're lucky, we have a horse. For the average Joe, right, the average warrior, we're on foot. Okay. So what can I do to minimize the amount of shit I'm carrying, but all of that stuff serves multiple purposes? Okay. So again, what we're really looking at here, and we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end, what we're really talking about is strategic thinking, right? Out of the box thinking, right? Can we get past the form of any given thing? Think about needs, think about mission, think about limitations, think about, right? Okay. And can we even step outside of the idea of things are only a weapon, or things are only a tool, or things are only a, okay? Just like when people think about, they've broken things up, where this martial art, this, okay? Those things broke up, at least from the Japanese standpoint, right? Post-Meiji Restoration. So we're talking about the late 1850s, when they outlawed martial arts for combat. Okay, so a lot of these smart guys like Funakoshi and guys like that, right, made shifts to make it more sport-like, to integrate it as a Zen, active, moving meditation kind of thing, whatever. Not that, you're going to take away all the killing aspects, but you can repaint it, right? People do it all day long, right? In today's culture, shit, people are redefining things left and right because of their agenda, right? Okay. So our ancient warriors, right, they had an agenda too. Okay. Let's keep this stuff alive, but we're going to explain it away in a different way. Just like in, the early 1900s, right? Before Hatsumi Sensei. Well, even when Hatsumi Sensei was training with Takamatsu Sensei. Well, not even the late 1900s, right? Mid 1900s, 1950s, 1960s, that kind of thing. So post World War II, right? The American occupational forces, or the Western occupational forces, right, outlawed martial arts, okay? Combat martial arts. They outlawed them because we're trying to keep the peace, right? So if, you got people out there whipping out swords and doing all kinds of crazy shit, right, then, have to shoot the locals, okay? We don't have to do that, right? So what does Takamatsu Sensei do, right? He takes Ninjutsu underground even farther, right? But they're training out in the open. They're not training in a building. They're training out in a park or rice paddy or whatever, right? And what are they doing? Well, they dress up in judo gi, okay? Because a lot of the American and British occupation forces were learning, they were going to judo classes, okay? Because it was perfectly fine because judo's a sport, right? So let's go to, let's do this, right? So now, okay, so doesn't have the same kind of battlefield combat connotations, right? So what's Takamatsu Sensei do? Has everybody show up for class in judo gi, okay? And so at first glance, when people look, what do they see? Okay? Well, what do they assume that they see, which is what's important, okay? And how we look at something, again, I'm going to go back to that again. The way we look at something and the way we define it creates our limitation, okay? Now, it can create a goal and something to aspire to, but hopefully as we get a handle of that, right, we move the goalpost, right? We expand or broaden the vision, right? We deepen the understanding, those kind of things. That's not the way ego typically works. Ego typically gets to a certain point and then gloats because it walks around going, I know shit you don't know, okay? But how much do you still not know? Because it's what you don't know that's going to bite you in the ass, not what you do know, okay? Or the improper application of what you think you know, that kind of thing, right? So again, combination weapons, but what about entering the realm of the weapon as a non-weapon? What the hell do I mean by that? Right? I don't think that's going to be dark enough for you guys, so we'll just stick with black today. Big fat marker, right? A weapon as a non-weapon. Okay? So to get to this point where it's a non-weapon, right? I think it's important to transition between the two. Okay. Because while the ninja could modify certain things, right? Was it really necessary? Because from a ninja standpoint, right, I have at least 2 impact weapons right here. Okay. I have the pommel, right, of the tsuka, the handle, right? Or if I'm only doing it single-handed, I've got the tsuka itself that I could be hitting with. Okay. Again, minimum of 2. This, right? And I have the scabbard itself that can be used for striking or locking or whatever, right? But if we start to really break things down, I have more than that. I have the side of the blade as an impact weapon. I have the spine of the blade as an impact weapon, those kind of things. And don't forget the tsuba, right? I can be hitting, pinching, right? Catching things, scraping, those kind of things, right? So there's this huge transition point, right? Same thing with these other weapons, right? But it's in how we look at it. If we don't approach that level of thinking, then we leave a lot on the table that could be used when our life's on the line. Okay. My shirt is a flexible weapon. Okay. I know I bought it as a shirt, but if this shirt gets torn or a piece gets torn off, or I'm at the beach and I'm in the process of taking it off, putting it back on, and something happens, right? It's no different than a towel that I can use for things, or a belt, right? But the level to which I can use it is going to depend on how much I've thought about it before that moment and how much effort I put into it to determine, right, this type of material, right, where its limitations, where its strengths, that kind of thing. Okay. A windbreaker, right? Most people think of very, very flimsy. Yes, I could use as a cordage. A windbreaker can be used as an impact weapon. Okay. Sorry, I already erased things. It can be used as an impact weapon. Okay. Because if I twist it and fold it in half and then fold it in half again, right, twisting it along the way, you can knock somebody out, or at least knock them off their feet with this thing because of the nature of that material folded over on itself, right? Glossy paper, glossy page magazines, right? Those kind of things. We've talked about in the past about how to turn everyday weapon or items into a weapon. But again, this is the other side of it. Okay. So being able to look at a weapon beyond its conventional use, right? Most people think of swords, spear, naginata, those kind of things as stabbing and cutting weapons, right? Meanwhile, the ninja comes along and sweeps your feet out from under you with the staff part and then cuts you while you're falling and you can't defend against that kill shot, okay? That kind of thing, right? So as we continue to transition over, right, a non-weapon, again, we're still looking at it as a tool, okay? So, right, being able to use the ninja toe, right, having an end like this or being reinforced, right, for digging, right, being able to get that thing out there, right? Often for stealth purposes, right, the ninja would brace the saya, right, the scabbard out here on the end of the blade. It's barely there. You can see that where I had to find that balance point where it's wedged on. And then the sageo, the cord, would be held in the mouth. And this is how you probe the darkness, because samurai were trained, right? Something makes a noise in the darkness and it sounds like it's really, really close. Wake up, grab that sword, and they'll cut the air. Right? So one of the tactics the ninja had was to probe the darkness this way. So when he jumped up and cut, what he was going to do was cut your scabbard away, and then you can also stab in the darkness, right? But that sageo, right, it's longer. It's a utility cord. It's attached to this so that I have it, right? It can be set up as a tripwire. It can be set up as a snare or a noose, right? Not just for people, right? These people were, these warriors were traveling from point to point, right? They're not packing up the igloo cooler, right, for the journey, okay? That means you've got to understand plant identification for everything from medicines to poisons to food, right? You've got to catch and trap and kill and dress, whatnot, birds, small animals or whatever, so you can eat along the way, all these kind of things, right? So again, having something where I've got this length where I can use it for different things. The same thing with the Kyoketsu Shoge, right? So I've got this ability to very, very quickly, right, fashion a slip knot where I don't have to tie things and create a figure of 8 or whatever, right? I can just simply create this thing, right? And then I've got this weight that can actually help to snap the neck of the creature. I know that's going to turn some people off because they're vegans or vegetarians, or this is the reason I am, or whatever. But you know what? It's easy to do that when you're at the top of the food chain and you're coming up with your reasons for. Right? But when you're starving to death or have the possibility, maybe you're not starving to death, but if you undernourish yourself and you get someplace and you have to save your life or somebody else's life at that point, and you don't have the physical energy to be able to do all the stuff you've been training to do, well, then you die. Okay? It's just that simple, right? But again, tripcord, noose, tripwire, those kind of things, right? So thinking about what's necessary, right? Let me pull one out that I didn't discuss earlier. We're going to go back to the spear. I'm having one of these things made. I don't have the exact name of this thing, but it's a type of spear that the ninja used, right? And it could be combined with the kamayari kind of idea, right? But what they would do was they would have holes drilled into the shaft at the same distance, right? At equidistant points all the way down the shaft. And then in a little pouch where they carried a bunch of things like shuriken and medicines and whatever, right? They'd have these pegs, these wooden pegs or bamboo pegs or whatever that they could slide into these holes. And now you had a ladder, right, for climbing up, right? And the kamayari, the little hook on the end could be, braced over, and you could shimmy up this thing. But the other thing that it was used for, and I've talked about this in the past, where because these holes were at equidistance, right? If the ninja was disguised as a worker or whatever, right, where maybe the stick wasn't exactly the same, but it was disguised as well, they could walk the length of, let's say, a castle wall, or they could just be in enemy territory, and they could use the length of this, right? Because it's easy to go length to length, because you know what that is, right? But it's when you're measuring smaller units, right? But it was used as a yardstick kind of idea, or a meter stick, or whatever you guys call it in the metric world, right? But the idea is that now you can do measurement with it because you're just counting these, okay? So again, the weapon, right? Yes, it's there as a weapon, okay? But how many other things could it be? Because again, when you're on a mission and you're living in a time and a world, right, where the stuff that everybody thinks of as just a normal thing, right? Going on a fishing trip, right? So we're going to load up the Jeep, we're going to load up the car, we're going to whatever, right? We've got this, we've got that, right? Kids carry the heavy crap. I'm going to carry my fishing pole, whatever, right? Then it's difficult sometimes to get our head wrapped around why these things would have been developed the way they were, okay? And sometimes it's just a case of minimizing gear because the gear is designed to be multifunctional and not just as a weapon, okay? So, well, again, what we're really talking about in this context, right, is strategic thinking. Okay, strategic thinking. My first introduction to this art way back in 1980, right? To this point, because we did a lot more study way back then into weapons and into ninja strategy and wilderness survival and all these other realms of ninjutsu beyond just this one aspect, right, of physical hand-to-hand combat, right? Because there's threats to the system that come from way more areas than just Joe Cool Jackass deciding that he wants a piece of you. Okay. So home security and all those kind of things, right? But thinking about it from the perspective of being a ninja, right? So the reference points we used back in the day, and I hope that at least one of these sticks with you based on age. Okay. And it was about thinking about being a ninja in the same context as being like a James Bond or a MacGyver. And I don't mean a government agent that's going after supervillains and things like that. What I'm talking about is when you get in a scrape and you have little to nothing in the way of gear or in the way of whatever it is you need, right? You're in a problem, you're in a situation, right? It's the mind as the most powerful weapon that you own. And it's the ability to fashion something out of parts, because you as a ninja or as an elite warrior, whatever term you want to use, right, doesn't just look at things as they are. Very, very quickly, your mind can fashion a solution out of what you have to get things done. Okay. So again, strategic thinking, outside the box thinking, right? That kind of thing. So now, do the weapons still exist? Of course, the weapons still exist, right? So during this Friday's virtual training class, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at a couple of these weapons, from the Ninja Toe to the Shoge, that kind of thing. And we're going to just kind of be exploring with them. Okay. And we'll see where we can go from there. All right. So if you want to get in on that action, right, and you're not already a member of my Nimpo Master class, where these guys get these virtual Zoom classes twice a week and whatever, there's a whole bunch of other things, or you're not a member of my Platinum Inner Circle groups that actually are working on black belt and different black belt levels and get extra coaching and money. If you're not in those groups, right, you can go to this website right here. There's a button there. You can sign up for the class, $4.99 US. It's the cheapest. You're going to work with me or any other instructor, unless they're just like so in need of disciples, right, that they're just giving the stuff away for free and they're independently wealthy and whatever, in which case, enjoy yourself. Okay. But you can come in. It's a 75 to 90-minute class, right? We're going to jump into these things, take a look at some of them, and we'll see where things go from there. Okay. But Friday's class will definitely be from a self-protection, personal safety kind of perspective. We'll talk about the tools a little bit, but I tend to not do that during those classes because they're a springboard off of Whiteboard Wednesday. So anyway, so there's that. If I see you on the Friday class, that'd be awesome. We'll talk about some things. I'll answer some questions for you, that kind of thing. If not, I wish you well. I've given you plenty to expand your knowledge, or I've given you plenty to think that I don't know what I'm talking about and you're still the shit, right? Other than that, if I see you next week, that'll be great. This will wrap up this week's Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. See you next time. Train hard.